How long does it take to destroy a reputation forged over years? For a 6-foot judoka at Los Angeles Airport in 1973, exactly 7 seconds. When he challenged Bruce Lee to a kung fu fight, he didn't imagine the response would come without words. In silence, precision, and a lesson he'd carry the rest of his life. March 1973, LAX Departures Terminal. Rush hour, sunlight streaming through windows, the air smells of jet fuel and fast food grease. Everything is movement, noise, rush. In a corner by orange plastic chairs, Bruce Lee sits, eyes closed, leather jacket on his lap. 3 days filming fight scenes. His body aches everywhere. Flight to San Francisco in 2 hours. He just wants peace. Near baggage claim, 8 men in white judo uniforms. Just back from a tournament in San Diego, talking loud, reliving fights. One demonstrates a throw. Laughter, slaps on backs. The tallest is Thomas. 28. 6 feet. 200 pounds of muscle. Black belt. 3rd Dan. His master taught him judo is a way of life based on efficiency and realism. Thomas doesn't tolerate techniques that only work in movies. When a companion points toward Bruce Lee, Thomas feels something tighten in his chest. He's read interviews where Bruce criticizes traditional styles, says real combat looks nothing like what's taught in classic dojos. Every word seemed disrespectful toward everyone dedicating years to perfecting techniques proven in real combat. A companion follows his gaze. "Is that who I think it is?" Thomas nods. The rest turn. Conversation dies. The air changes. Bruce opens his eyes slowly. His body perceives the change. He sees the group. White uniforms, belts. Understands immediately. Not fans, practitioners. Thomas takes 3 steps forward, stops 2 meters away. Bruce looks up. Thomas crosses his arms. "You're Bruce Lee." Not a question. Voice firm, loud enough for passengers to hear. Bruce nods once. Waits. "I've read what you say about judo, karate. You say they don't work in real combat." Bruce doesn't respond immediately. "I didn't say they don't work. I said they have limitations, like everything." Thomas shakes his head. "You're saying what I've trained 15 years doesn't work." More people watching. Thomas steps closer. "Judo works, in reality. I just need to touch you once. You go to the ground. Your kicks are worthless." Bruce places hands on knees, leans forward. "You're right. Judo is effective, but it has rules. In the street, no rules. No tatami, no referee." Thomas laughs, tense. "Your kung fu strikes will stop someone who throws you against concrete?" Over 30 watching now. An airport employee speaks into radio. Bruce stands. Movement slow, fluid, standing. Height difference evident. Thomas clearly taller, broader. "I don't need to stop you with strikes," Bruce says, voice still calm. "I just need to not be where you want me to be." Thomas frowns. "What does that mean?" Bruce doesn't answer with words, just takes a step back, creating more space. Thomas interprets the movement as evasion, as fear disguised as philosophy. "There it is," he says, voice now edged. "You talk a lot in interviews, criticize styles with centuries of history, but when you're facing a real practitioner, you back away." His companions murmur. This is no longer just Thomas's. It's all of theirs. Judo against kung fu. Tradition against innovation. Proven against publicized. Thomas slowly removes his black belt and drops it to the floor. "If you really believe your kung fu works, prove it. Here, now." The belt lies on the shining floor like a dividing line. Bruce looks at it, then meets Thomas's eyes. "I didn't come here to fight. I came to catch a flight." Thomas smiles bitterly. "Of course, everyone talks until it's time to back up their words," turns to companions. "See? Lots of philosophy in interviews, lots of criticism, but when it's time to demonstrate..." Bruce breathes deep, closes his eyes for a second. When they open, something has changed. Not anger, not wounded pride, decision. "We don't need to fight. But if you insist, I'll show you the difference between knowing judo and understanding combat." Thomas turns quickly, tone triumphant. "Now that I told you what you are, you decide to fight." Bruce shakes his head slowly. "I'm not going to fight you. I'm just going to show you why you're wrong." The distinction seems subtle, but for those listening carefully, it means everything. Not violence. Teaching. The circle of observers has grown. Now over 50 people. Some have left their suitcases on the floor. Others have climbed on chairs to see better. 2 airport employees arrive running, but stop a few meters away, evaluating the situation. Something in the atmosphere tells them any abrupt interruption could make things worse. Thomas positions himself in combat stance, feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly flexed, hands forward, ready to grab. Classic judo posture, one he's adopted thousands of times in training and competitions. Confidence doesn't come from arrogance, but from repetition, from victories, from hours on the tatami. "Whenever you're ready," he says. His voice is firm. Bruce doesn't adopt any formal stance, just stands there, arms relaxed at his sides, weight evenly distributed, seems almost casual, as if waiting in line. But those who know real combat notice the details, how his feet are positioned, not completely together, not completely apart. The slight tilt of his torso, shoulders loose but not drooping. No visible tension, but every part of his body is ready to move. "Try to grab me," Bruce says. Simple, direct, emotionless. Thomas frowns. "What?" "Try to grab me like you would in a judo match." Thomas hesitates for an instant, not from fear, but because the instruction is strange. In judo, both fighters grab simultaneously. But the situation has gone too far to back down now. His companions are watching. The crowd is watching. "As you wish," he says. First second, Thomas's hands extend forward, seeking the grip on neck and collar. But Bruce is no longer there. Doesn't back up, doesn't jump away. Simply slides laterally. Minimal movement, barely a foot to the left. Thomas's hands find air. Second, Thomas launches his hands with more determination, anticipating the lateral movement. Goes lower, seeking the torso instead of the neck. But Bruce moves again, this time to the right. And not just laterally, he also pivots slightly, making Thomas's body pass beside him without contact, like trying to grab smoke. Second, Thomas changes tactics. Instead of going direct, he feints right, then attacks left. A movement he uses in competitions against evasive opponents. Works almost always. But Bruce doesn't bite. When Thomas feints, Bruce doesn't react. When Thomas attacks, Bruce simply tilts his torso back, barely inches, enough for the hands to pass grazing his shirt without grabbing fabric. Second, Thomas launches with everything, no longer trying to be technical, just wants to make contact. Any contact. His hands sweep the space like trying to catch a fly, but Bruce moves again, this time ducking slightly and turning around Thomas in a fluid circular movement. In a blink, Bruce is behind him. Thomas spins quickly, but his balance is compromised. For the first time in years, he feels out of control in combat. 5th second. Thomas breathes agitated now, not just from effort, but from frustration, from humiliation, beginning to settle. He's tried 5 times to grab a man less than 6 feet away and hasn't managed to touch him once. Launches another attempt, more desperate than previous ones. Bruce simply steps back, synchronizing his movement perfectly with Thomas's momentum. The judoka staggers slightly, extended too far, center of gravity compromised. 6th second. It's at that moment, when he's most vulnerable, that Bruce acts, not with a strike, with a simple push on the shoulder. The push isn't strong, barely a touch. A suggestion of force applied at the exact moment where Thomas has no balance. But it's enough. Thomas, with all his weight leaning forward, nothing to grab to stabilize, begins to fall. He tries to recover, plant a foot, turn his hips, anything his training has taught him. But it's too late. His knee hits the floor first, then his palm. Not a violent fall, not spectacular, but undeniable. He's on the ground. And Bruce is standing, 3 steps back, arms still relaxed at his sides, not even breathing hard. 7th second. Absolute silence in the terminal. No applause, no shouts. Only the sound of Thomas's breathing. Heavy, choppy, mixed with the hum of airplane engines in the distance. Thomas is on one knee, looking at the floor, hands still pressed against the cold linoleum. He's not physically hurt. Nothing hurts except something nameless, something that lives in his chest and feels like the collapse of certainty. For 15 years he believed he understood combat. For 15 years he believed his judo was the answer. And in 7 seconds, in front of 50 strangers, that belief just shattered. Bruce approaches slowly, not with arrogance, not as a victor over the vanquished. Approaches as a teacher toward a student who just stumbled upon a difficult truth. He kneels beside Thomas, matching his height. "You didn't lose because your judo is bad," he says quietly. "You lost because you tried to apply tatami rules in a situation without tatami." Thomas looks up. His eyes are moist, but he's not crying. It's something else. The forced humility that comes when ego crashes against reality. "But you didn't even hit me," he whispers. Bruce nods. "I didn't need to hit you. I just needed to show you that combat isn't about strength or technique. It's about adaptation, about reading what the opponent does and being where he doesn't expect." He extends his hand. Thomas looks at it for a long moment, as if deciding something bigger than simply accepting help to stand. Finally, he takes the hand. Bruce helps him to his feet. When they're face to face again, the dynamic has completely changed. No longer challenger and challenged, just 2 men who understand something about combat, one more than the other. Thomas picks up his belt from the floor, holds it in his hands as if seeing it for the first time. Thomas's companions approach slowly. One puts a hand on his shoulder. They say nothing. Don't need to. All saw the same thing. Bruce turns to return to his seat, but Thomas stops him. "Wait." Bruce turns. Thomas swallows. "How? How do I learn that?" The question is simple, but loaded with weight. The question of someone whose world just expanded. Bruce smiles slightly. "You stop trying to be bottled water and learn to be the water." Thomas frowns, confused, but before he can ask, Bruce is already walking toward his luggage. The airport employees finally intervene cautiously. One asks Bruce if he wants to file a report. Bruce shakes his head. "Nothing happened. Just a conversation. The employee looks at Thomas, who nods silently. No fight, no violence. Technically, nothing to report. Bruce picks up his leather jacket and suitcase, walks toward the gate that finally announces his flight. Nobody asks for an autograph. Nobody approaches. There's a silent respect in the space surrounding him now, as if he'd just done something sacred. He sits in a chair near the gate, opens his book of Taoist philosophy again, finds the page he'd marked. His fingers find the passage he was reading before. Water is the softest and weakest thing in the world, but for attacking the hard and strong, nothing surpasses it. He smiles to himself, closes the book, closes his eyes, and waits for his flight home. Years later, Thomas will open his own dojo. It won't be a pure judo dojo. It will be a dojo where he teaches judo, yes, but also adaptation, reading opponents, fluid movement. He'll hang a photo on the wall, Los Angeles Airport, Terminal 3. Though nobody appears in the photo, just the place. And when his students ask why that photo is there, he'll tell them a story. The story of a day when a 6-foot man with a black belt challenged Kung Fu in front of 50 people and learned in 7 seconds that the loudest voice in the room is never the wisest. That technique, without adaptation, is just routine, and that sometimes the most important lessons don't come from victory, but from humility. Bruce Lee never spoke publicly of that day, didn't mention it in interviews, didn't use it to promote his films, because for him, it wasn't a victory. It was exactly what he said it would be. A demonstration. A way to show without words what he'd been trying to explain in every interview, every article, every conversation about martial arts. That real combat doesn't live in systems. It lives in the ability to abandon the system when the system no longer serves. That being like water doesn't mean being soft. It means being impossible to catch, impossible to contain, impossible to defeat with brute force or rigid technique. And that afternoon, as the sun set over Los Angeles and planes took off toward distant destinations, 50 people carried with them a story they'd tell in different ways. Some would say it was a fight, others an exhibition. Some would exaggerate the details, others minimize them. But all, absolutely all, would remember one thing. They saw a man fall without being struck, and in that fall there was more teaching than 1,000 victories. Because sometimes losing to the right person is the only way to start winning against yourself. 7 seconds. That's all it took. 7 seconds to dismantle years of certainty. 7 seconds to show that mastery doesn't shout, doesn't need to announce its presence. It simply is. And when it meets rigidity, arrogance disguised as confidence, it doesn't destroy it. It transforms it, molds it, teaches it. Because the true master doesn't seek victories, he seeks students. And sometimes students appear in the most unexpected places, in airport terminals, amid crowds, in moments where ego and humility collide. And in those 7 seconds, everything changes forever.